Welcome to the Dudecast Extra on Saturday night rather than Monday night. Because, I've got stuff to do, guys. I had to do it on Saturday. My bad. I am Mike O'Fett because things with the Fett name happened in the 9th episode.
Yes,
Miniman Rifen, welcome back to the show.
Hola.
And Tonwee's eulogist. So appropriate.
Too soon?
Too soon. I had to do a wellness check on Rhett. There's a long backstory that maybe I'll let Rhett tell sometime again on CTI about his love for Tonwee. That began through the Card Trader app, the Star Wars Card Trader app. There he is.
Right on time.
Right on time. So sorry for those. I probably shouldn't put his comment up.
Well, and given Rhett's feelings on animation, maybe he hasn't gotten to this yet.
Rhett professed his love for animation this week.
He did. I was very surprised. I was very surprised. So, of course, we're here to talk about the 9th episode of Bad Batch called Bounty Lost. And then the 3rd episode of Loki called Lamentis, which is interesting. And I unfortunately did not do any research on Lamentis. So I'm hoping one of you guys did some research on where in the Marvel universe that was ever mentioned before. I did a quick search and actually couldn't find anything, so I'm wondering if it was just for this show. I'm not sure.
I did a quick cursory glance. It's from the comics, and it was the biggest thing I saw that it was listed as on the edge of Kree space, and so it could have been somehow connected to the Kree and that whole deal. But I had done a search as well, hoping that there was some sort of Latin word, and lamentus means infinite sadness, or I was looking more from that side of it, where do we get this from?
Exactly.
But so I did that quick peek, and the biggest thing I saw was that it was a planet on the edge of Kree territory or space.
Now, did either of you, and we're going out of order, but did either of you research 2077 in the Marvel universe?
I did not.
It was 100 years after Star Wars. I don't know.
All right.
And we know Star Wars is in the Marvel universe because Peter Parker talks about it all the time. So
he'd really, and I mean, his buddy built a Death Star, Lego Death Star. I mean, it's all that way. So let's talk about Bounty Lost first. As we normally do, we give time to Bad Batch first, and this was quite the episode. I mean, a lot really did happen in this episode, and I think we're going to continue to ramp up throughout the season. It was cool to see it begin right as episode 8 ended. So, I mean, there was no space and time there. I mean, we have Crosshair pursuing Clone Force 99 and trying to take them down. And so I thought that was interesting, that we get to see this, start right as the episode was ending this week, beginning this week. So I liked that quite a bit. And he's looking rough. As I mentioned last week, I love the fact that he's now basically a Bond villain. He's scarred on the face. I don't know if they'll, follow up with that, but right now he's still pretty scarred up on the face. And
that was the very first note I wrote, because like you said, this opens up immediately with them with him in hot pursuit of the Bad Batch. Yep. And the first note I wrote was, is Crosshair okay already? Because for as rough as he looked, he was right there piloting that ship and right behind him. And while we know, because we know Dengar is already showed up in the Clone Wars, we know he's not Dengar, but you can't help but get those vibes with the head wrap,
the bandage,
and the one eye covered, and the whole deal. So
I am hoping for an awesome looking eye patch. There's not enough of eye patches in Star Wars, so I'm hoping for an awesome looking eye patch. Some big reveals in this episode. We shore up a lot of who's been working with whom. Fennec Shan's working with this person. Obviously Cad Bane is working for this person or doing a job, for this person. Rifen, what are your thoughts on Lama Su versus Nala Se? Lama Su really doesn't seem like a very nice person in this episode.
No.
And Nala Se is almost turning into a bit of a protagonist, which is interesting to me. So thoughts on that, Ryfen?
It didn't surprise me based on the way they'd kind of set things up. I know we had kind of assumed that the thing that surprised me was that who Fennec Shand was working for. I mean, it made sense at the end of the day. And that's a part of that conflict that you're talking about. But I wasn't surprised that the people laid where they laid at the end of the episode, you know?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there had been a bit of foreshadowing with Nala Se obviously being an advocate for Omega. I mean, we saw that in a couple of different ways throughout the season, but this even went a little bit further. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, first I want to say there was a lot of great action sequences in this. Fantastic. As always, the animation for this show has just been amazing. You know, I was bummed out that this wasn't Bespin. I thought they went to Bespin. It's not Bespin, obviously, because this is in the Lido system, so that's nowhere near Bespin.
No.
If you look on Wikipedia, it says that specifically this is Boravio, which no mention of it anywhere else in canon except for this episode. So, you know, I thought that was interesting.
And that was one of those pickups that I got from the having the captions on, as we were talking about just a minute ago.
Yeah,
I caught that as it came across, and they said something about at our whatever other facility or whatever it was. So it's a decommissioned, obviously Kaminoan facility, and we see that with the tanks and that whole deal.
Which that's interesting. I mean, and we can talk about that a little bit, because as far as we knew up to this point, at least as far as I knew, you know, I don't necessarily follow every single novel and every single comic or whatever. But as far as I knew at this point, Kamino was the only place that they had these clone facilities. I'm sure that has been brought up in canon someplace else, but I didn't know that they were going to other planets completely to do this type of stuff. Had that been, to your knowledge, ever brought up anywhere, Nick?
Wasn't something that I was aware of, because I'm terribly behind on the books and have never really been a comic books reader. I try to, you know, stay conversational with my friends that are, and, you know, I have those moments where a couple weeks ago when the big reveal in the War of the Bounty Hunters book, and it was Kira at the end and that whole thing, I saw the hype about, this last page, and I just texted one of my buddies. I was like, tell me what it is. I'm not going to buy that. And so, no, I have no idea. That's the long way of saying I'm not sure if it should. I mean, it makes sense that there would have been other facilities just for the sheer volume of clones that they were cranking out at one point.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, we get those little nods as well in The Mandalorian, you know, talking about cloning and talking about, you know, we see the little tank of Snoke's or whatever it is in that one episode. So it makes sense that there's more, but my knowledge of it, it's never really been talked about. We've always just centralized it on Kamino.
Well, and I think that they said, and I heard this on another YouTube show, just because, I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're watching 50,000 YouTube shows. But they mentioned, and I never really put two and two together, that this was not necessarily the Kaminoans' first foray into creating an army of clones. They even say this was their most successful attempt at it, but obviously they had been hired, just, you know, from reading that line, they had been hired before by others to create clones. And if you're looking at the different clones that were on Boravio, one of them to me looked like a Celestian almost. In one of those green things, and then the other one looked almost like it was a Kaminoan, but the neck seemed a little short. It's like it was a weird hybrid. So, you know, it's very strange that they have started trying to create these other races. But, you know, obviously we get some of that in Mandalorian with them wanting to clone Grogu. You know, obviously they're trying to clone, get some Grogu going there, get their Grogu on. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, we get Nala Se. She and I don't know if I still completely trust her, but she is at least at a point where, hey, as long as Omega is not with Lama Su, I'm happy.
Right. Yeah,
you know,
and I think that turned. Go ahead, Ryfin.
I was gonna say I don't trust Nala Se's intentions, but at least she doesn't want to kill Omega, at least right now. So
yeah, and I was gonna say I think that turned for her when they're having that conversation where Nala Se volunteers to take the credits and go meet Cad Bane and that whole deal, and he makes the comment about your intentions have been made clear, and so he sends Tanwi instead, and then when he makes the comment about when she gets back here, take her down, harvest what you need, and then terminate her. I think obviously that's the Nala Se turning point. Now, like you said, how is it going to go completely? But that was when she said, so you see it in the end in the conversation with Fennec. I don't care as long as she's not back here.
Yeah. And Brian asks an interesting question here. Are the Kaminoans themselves enhanced beings? Well, I mean, look, there is, again, I heard this on another show, but there is some people that think that's how the Kaminoans have continued to stay around, is they keep cloning themselves, basically. Now, I don't know the extent of that. That's some messed up stuff, but could be. I mean, and obviously they have no problem creating enhanced clones. That's kind of the thing that they like to do. But also, the main group of clones that they created have accelerated lifespans, and they have the ability to control them in this way, especially with the chip in their heads, which the big, huge, massive reveal. And Rife, and I'll let you talk about this a little bit, but I mean, we find out that Omega is related to somebody in a way related to somebody. So, Ryfin, take it away. I'll let you be the one that talks about that stuff.
Well, let me make sure I have this right. She's a first-generation clone of Jango Fett.
Correct.
Okay, so like in film terms, Jango Fett's the negative, and she's the inner positive. She's the first-generation step.
Okay, I see what you're talking about in photography.
In film.
Film. Okay.
Literal film.
Okay. Yeah, I mean... kind of. Basically, she is the way that they put it, I believe, is that she is Jango's raw genetic material.
Yeah.
But that's the
made her a girl.
Exactly. Yeah. So they can manipulate gender as they please, obviously in that case. But yeah, but she's the only other one besides, I'll say it, Boba Fett. I mean,
and that's why they want her, because she's the closest to the source, and you get closest to the source, you have the best clones that you can produce.
Yeah,
it makes total sense.
Yeah,
I like it. It's a really cool aspect of the show they've introduced.
Yeah, I kind of felt like they were going to have to do that. I'm glad that there is no connection to Palpatine that we know of. It seems like the route that they're going is this is Boba Fett's, this is Boba Fett's stepsister, for lack of a better, I don't know, or sister. So she doesn't have the accelerated aging. She obviously doesn't have the inhibitor chip or any way to control her in that way, because they wanted to make her pure genetic material from Jango. Yeah. It's a big deal. I mean, to introduce this character is kind of a big deal in the sense that they could easily, if she happens to still be alive, they could incorporate her into some live action stuff. But what we don't know is what Boba's reaction is going to be when he finds out, because obviously he's going to be in this show at some point.
I mean, you don't mention him without there being some.
Sure, you don't name drop him. Without him being in the show.
I feel like I know there's been a lot of talk about the Cad Bane thing being paid off finally. I feel like we're heading towards something like that.
Yeah, and I think the Cad Bane thing was maybe paid off even more than we can imagine, because he has this like what almost looks like a metal plate on his head.
Yeah.
Which, the animatics that were never released.
Right.
Released in the sense that they weren't ever, completed.
Finished. Right.
Yeah.
He apparently took a headshot from Boba Fett. So because he's got that metal plate on his head.
And that was something that I saw last week after he showed up, and I think maybe we even talked about it on Monday, is that there was an article that had like the production art for this version of Cad Bane, and it had him without his hat on, and it had the plate, and it was highlighted a little bit more, which kind of the theory is pointing in the direction that standoff has already happened.
Right.
Because again, even in those animatics, of course he's got his very gunslingery kind of ways, calling Omega little lady all over and over again.
Yeah.
He refers to Boba as the kid in those animatic scenes. And so it lent itself to a younger, inexperienced Boba getting into that face-off and showdown. But I do like, essentially the Chekhov's Boba Fett theory that we've now put out in front of us is the name has been spoken. We are kind of in the middle of a Bobazance heading towards the Book of Boba Fett in the fall. I'd be shocked if we don't get a Daniel Logan voiced Boba Fett of some sort in this show.
Man, if there's anybody on the planet that really wants that to happen, it's Daniel Logan himself.
Yes, no doubt.
I mean, because that dude is out there shilling hard for a job.
No doubt. And as hard as he's worked, I'd say give him a shot because with animation, they do that. And it would almost be, if you do it with Tamora Morrison, then you kind of get back into like Freddie Prinze doing Young Kanan for a minute. Like, if it's going to be a younger Boba, let Daniel Logan, let it put a cap on that story for him.
And the thing I like about the Clone Wars and Bad Batch is that you actually have voice actors doing a lot of these roles, but then they'll bring in sometimes the bigger actors to come in and do the cameo appearances.
Totally.
Whereas a lot of major animated films nowadays just bring in a bunch of big actors who don't know how to voice act.
Yeah.
Well, and I do love, of course, the overlap with Ming-Na Wen being Fennec Shand.
Yes.
And being able to do, the voice in the live. Actors. Yeah. Doing both of them. So I love that we do get that, crossover.
Yeah. And just to answer Brian's question real quick here, I think she's probably 2 years younger than Boba.
I think they're very close in age, and I would agree. I think she's just slightly younger.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit younger, a year, 2 years. I mean, I don't think they're the exact same age. I mean, I'm sure that there's some way that we can determine that just by taking into account everything that we know about when Boba Fett was created versus when she was created and all that. But I don't know. I'm lazy and I think it's 2 years. I mean, I'm just going to say that. I mean, I haven't researched that, but I don't think they're the same age though. Yeah. I don't think they're the same age. And that will bring up some interesting storytelling devices or potentially interesting storytelling devices because you'll have Boba who could go one of two ways here. He could be very protective of his younger sister, or he could be upset that she even exists. Exactly. So we could go either way with that.
He's more of a perfect clone of Jango almost, and she's been messed with pretty clearly. So
right. And the one thing that for the longest time, the Star Wars fan only knew Boba as a villain. Now they have completely changed the whole concept of Boba Fett by the Mandalorian and having him be kind of an honorable guy. And we never really got that in the Clone Wars, though. I mean, he was still a punk kid, but also he had just lost his dad, so he had kind of reason to be
rebelling.
He was pretty ticked off at Mace Windu. I mean, he had right to be, though. I mean, he was ticked off at a lot of people. And really lashed out at even those that were quote unquote his part of his team, part of the bounty hunting team and whatnot. So, and he's still going to be he's only going to be like 14, 15, something like that. And so he could still have some, lashing out teenage moments type stuff. So I don't know if we're going to get to see teenage angst, exactly like teenage Groot.
We do have some of that in the earlier seasons of Clone Wars, where there are some of those arcs where he's with that other crew, and it just I don't know. The more I think about it, and with them being that close in age, it seems harder to picture him at least showing up in the armor, but maybe it's not an in the armor situation.
Yeah, and no, Brian, look, I'm an optimist, and I'm hoping that something like this happens where, goes off into the sunset with her older brother. But I don't know. I still fear that there's going to be some sad stuff that happens in this show at some point.
They can't go off in the sunset with each other, just based on the future.
Well, we don't know. There's a large gap of time. I mean, between what we know.
They go off into the sunset, and then Boba Fett gets jaded because his sister was killed while in that gap.
And then Omega changes her name to Captain Phasma.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Dude. Well, I mean... no, that's interesting to say. I mean,
I genuinely hope that doesn't happen.
But... I genuinely hope it doesn't happen. But I mean, and the fact that both Boba and Omega are going to naturally age, so they're not going to have this accelerated age. So we're going to get to see them both kind of naturally age. It's going to be good. I mean, there's the potential for this character to creep into live action if something tragic doesn't happen by the end of this season. Yeah. Which I'm still convinced, since we're getting 16 episodes basically, that this is a one-shot season. But hey, they may surprise me. I don't know.
Something really important happened at the end of the episode. Hunter made a promise.
Yeah, and that's
go back to Kamino.
That's never
that's
good.
A promise that's going to get broken.
Yeah,
that's never. It's like, and it was the double promise, because he was like, "I promise," and she was like, "You promise?" He was like, "I promise." Whenever you see that, you're like, "Oh, we're done." I mean, that's there's going to be something, unfortunately, that happens back on Kamino. We get a lot of Toto in this episode.
Yeah, he was great.
Which is a fun character. Seth Green coming back to do that voice is always a fun. Yeah, that he's Toto. Obviously, it's manipulated a little bit, so you can't really tell it's Seth Green, obviously. But it's cool that he's in the Star Wars universe, because his show will never get released. So Detours. For those who don't know, Seth Green was involved in Detours.
I feel like every year there's like a theory that it's going to get released on May 4th or something on D+. And
this year, I mean, especially because Weird Al was like tweeting about it, and they released that episode on Reddit. I mean, that's all marketing generally when that type of leak happens.
Yes.
So a lot of people thought May 4th we're getting Detours.
The pilots to the CW Arrowverse shows used to leak a lot and really crisp, nice quality with no like screener tags or like things that are usually embedded into those things. Right.
Wow, this is a really crisp looking leak that you've got here. And I mean, the episode of Detours that released looked great. I mean, it didn't look like it was.
An episode was out.
Yeah, it was one that took place in Dexter's Diner, which of course I loved. I mean, anytime you involve Dexter, it's a good thing.
I remember they were in there. So
yeah. So Toto being manipulated pretty easily by Omega, and
but now that fix his leg.
That she did fix his leaked in 4K exactly. I thought this was an interesting side of Omega that we haven't seen before, and her willingness to manipulate, because that's a trait that generally you don't see from a person who only knows good. So far, like, Omega only knows good, right? I mean,
that's an interesting point. Yeah. But in the mythology of a lot of things, I mean, college, I've had to read the Iroquois creation story and stuff like that. The good brother in that story manipulates his brother into basically getting killed. And that's supposed to be the good guy, and that's something we talk about morally. Was it good for him to do that? And that's really interesting, because I don't think they're going to take Omega down a bad route. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think this was a one-off. I think this was a one-off because she knew she would have to manipulate this robot. That's and it's not. It's not like
an interesting moral question.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that she even had that inclination was new for this particular character. So, new to this character, and also even shows the viewer that she is even more human than we thought. I mean, she is yes, she's a clone, but she is an unaltered genetic match to Django, basically. And so she's going to start to have some of these human traits. And I think that's good that they showed that, right? I mean, Nick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I was going to chime in kind of on the same thing, because one of the choices I like that they've made kind of throughout this whole series so far with her, after we got through that first episode, we meet her. She has the amazing shot, you know, with the blaster rifle as they're trying to get away and that whole thing. And so we kind of had this, like, is she a combination of all the Bad Batch? Is she going to have all the good traits, all the, you know, the whatever? But as we've gone along, she has been very human. She has had lots of mess ups, and not only in just being human, but also leaning to her age and being a kid and making those, running out past the fence. I talked about that the other day, last week, when she's defusing the bomb with Wrecker and she messes up. Not only did she mess up, but she tripped over that thing trying to get away to hide. On this one, she gets out, but like, she gets caught again, and she, you know, it's not just a perfectly, oh, she's an amazing escape artist all of a sudden, you know, go. She gets into the pod and the pod craps out on her. Like, there were all these flawed moments that allow her to still need help, and especially to need, you know, her dad batch guys. In fact, I wrote it down. One of the things that I caught also with the captions on is in that hallway when she's running from Bane, and as he grabs her and the communicator thing is still on, she's off camera, but you see in the caption, she says, "Hunter, I need you." And that hit a dad heartstring for me, just in that moment of, like, the thought of my kid being somewhere and I can't help them, you know, just crushes my soul a little bit. And that was that moment that she was in. So very human, very, you know, flawed and growing and learning. And she is growing and learning. You know, she's figured out the bow. She's, you know, doing more of the technology things. And of course, she may have done some of that being a lab assistant on Camino. We don't know, but you know, there's growth there, but it's not instant badassery. You know, it's her having to learn it as a kid. So
yeah, I mean, and as a character who is, you know, quote unquote, fish out of water, this is new environments for her, new circumstances for her. She's, you know, intuitively learning things, and, you know, kind of like Fetmatic, you know, mentioned here, she's got, just like any human that would be in any situation like that, the instincts for survival sort of just kick in. And she knows that, look, there's this droid that's probably easily manipulated, because it, you know, droids for the most part in the Star Wars universe, for the most part, are trustworthy of humans. I mean, obviously there's been introduction of some different aspects of that in Solo, but I mean, you know, for the most part, droids are going to do what a human tells them to do, you know.
And I think the other point with that, and I think maybe Ryfin said it a minute ago, that as a kid and still having that pure spirit, when she talked Toto into opening the door, she did fix his leg. She did what she said she was going to, but she also saw her opportunity to get away. So it's not like she got out and grabbed the first thing and beat his brains in. Like, she did what she said she would, because I have kids that are in that age range, and I know one of mine would be like, but I said I would, you know, like, she'd be that kid. So it does still ring pretty true.
That was something that, especially when I was a kid, I always keep my promises. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. But she didn't say she wasn't going to not escape.
Correct.
She's going to take advantage of deactivate the droid. I mean, she made no promises she wasn't going to do that. I mean, but there's one aspect of the episode that, as a person who felt like Cad Bane was one of those bounty hunters that often got the best of everyone, it seemed like he was a bit overtaken in a lot of different ways in this episode.
He seemed slower.
He seemed you know, a little off his game. You know, Fennec Shand, they obviously wanted to make the point, and I think, in fact, you know, Cad Bane references that she's new to the game, that she's I don't younger. Know if he reference younger. I mean, but she really gets the best of him in several different ways. You know, fighting, you know, we automatically see, I mean, she kicks a thermal detonator back in his face, which was an awesome scene, but But yeah, I mean, he's getting old. He's an old dude.
Or whatever happened there maybe injured him.
That's right.
Enough that slowed him down. But
like Cousin Eddie, he's got that plate right under his part, just right here.
Exactly. Oh, and Fatmatic does make a good point here. I mean, she was speaking some truth to Toto about his relationship with Cad Bane. I mean, mentioning the fact that, if he's your friend, why isn't he making a better effort to fix your leg, or be nicer to you? Which again, there's the whole concept of, can I be nice to a non-sentient being like a droid? But I mean, in Star Wars, that's there's gray area there, obviously.
For sure.
Or at least they wanted to. Oh yeah, we had to do a Cousin Eddie reference. So yeah, I mean, poor Cad Bane, just and Finnick, sabotaging his ship so he couldn't leave. I mean, just wasn't a good day for Cad Bane. We'll just put it that way. Well, maybe, Rhett. What if it is? What if it is?
Just keep delaying the inevitable.
Yeah,
Loki.
I'm trying to look at any of my other notes. Oh, I mean, we've got to say, Lama Su, hardcore, kind of ruthless. Like, get what you need from Omega, and then Terminator. Like, had no problem saying Terminator. Yep. So that really goes to show you, and not that we didn't kind of know this already about the Kaminoans. They don't care about their product, really. It's just product to them. The whole cloning process is just product. So, yeah, I mean, but not necessarily to Nala Se. Nala Se obviously has a soft spot for Omega. Again, I'm wondering, like, what is there going to be something else there? Does she want her back a little bit for other reasons? Who knows? That'll be interesting to see if they revisit that, because they are going to go back to Kamino, especially since they laid that out for us that they are. Yes, I promise we won't go back to Kamino.
Yeah.
And I think it has the potential to open the door for that Boba Fett cameo that we talk about, because if she's in trouble, Nala Se would likely be the one to know where Boba is and say, hey, I need you to go help your sister. I need, just being on this other, the other side of Lama Su and playing this whole game from either side.
So you think Nala Se has a way to contact Boba?
I think so. Yeah. I think
interesting.
I think there's a connection there. And so if Omega's in trouble, or if something turns bad with Finnick, she could have the opportunity to, or they both get, Finnick gets cornered. She's got Omega with her. We need you to go help get them out of trouble. Nala Se, I think, could have a channel to Boba to do something like that. Just a theory.
Well, yeah, no, I like that theory a lot. Now, I got the impression that they're kind of telling us that we're done seeing Finnick in this series. Just because Nala Se is kind of like, I'm going to give you your money. You're absolved of, as long as Omega's safe. Now, she obviously could always call her back up, but, I don't know. I just got the impression that we were kind of done with her. I think
it very well could be, but
yeah.
And we're still, again, we're kind of in that place where we don't really know for sure where we're heading, because we're kind of at some neatly tied up things this week. Omega's back with the Bad Batch. Obviously Bane is still going to be motivated to get his money and whatever, so he could still be in the chase. But like you said, if Finnick is out, and so now is it, it's the cat and mouse between Bane, the Kaminoans, and the Bad Batch. But I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss, other than kind of big, crazier theories for where we headed with these
I mean, it is interesting episodes. That they kind of tied up a lot of stuff with this one episode. So yeah, I mean, I think Cad's not done. He's ticked off at Finnick. He's wanting to get Omega, so I think there's going to be some stuff there with him and Finnick too.
This was definitely another episode where I felt like it wasn't going to be resolved as fast. I didn't think she was going to get to the Clone Force 99 at the end of the episode.
Yeah,
like the chip episode. I thought it would be kind of 2 parts or something.
Absolutely.
And, they resolved that pretty fast. So
Yeah, totally.
The only other note I had, and this is, these have been notes I've had every episode and probably will be every episode till it's over. The animation and the music, but I am unabashedly in love with the animation of this show, much more so than original Clone Wars. I said, I think Thursday when I was on one of the Twitter Spaces thing talking about this, I never knew I would spend as much time as I do thinking about and talking about lighting effects in animation and the way lighting is done in the way this is drawn, the smoke in those hallways. And like you said, when she kicks the thermal detonator and the light effects, or when, Echo's sitting in front of a computer screen and you're getting the actual ambient glow, on everything about the animation. To me, it's like I just catch myself staring sometimes because I'm just like, God, that looks so cool.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with the music. I mean, the Kiner brothers have not, and since honestly, I noticed them with that season 7 run and the musical cues that they did in that, but it has continued. I would love at this point if they had the opportunity to do some music, maybe on a film at some point down the road, because I really like
love that too,
what they're doing with the music in these shows.
Get Kevin Feige to hire him for his film.
No Absolutely. Doubt, man. Awesome. I mean, what's cool about the music for this series is that it's almost a continuation of some of the themes, and I'm not saying like actual character themes, but just the Vangelis type feeling of some of the themes from Clone Wars season 7 on into Bad Batch. As these shows have progressed in time, the animated world is keeping that same kind of like, this doesn't really feel like Star Wars music, but now we're used to it because they've had it for quite a bit.
And it was kind of the same thing with Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian, the music for Mandalorian took some very non-traditional Star Wars music routes because of what Ludwig Göransson did. Yeah. And that's awesome. And the same thing in this. Like there are some ties and things that harken back and, those little connecting points. But like this episode, especially, all the different musical cues added to build the suspense of Omega trying to find that communicator before Bane got there, the chase in the hallway. Like it was done in such a great way that just added that element. And that was something I loved about the original Star Wars as a kid, was like you could watch it. In fact, when I think it was when Last Jedi came out, there's a version on the digital thing that you can do that's the soundtrack only. Or the score only. And I love that. And the music tells such good stories. And I feel like they're continuing that with this show, which is really great.
Especially John Williams.
No doubt John Williams, but John Powell even, with, some of the Rogue One and Solo music. And, Star Wars always gets music right. Yeah. Giacchino, whatever it is. Cappuccino. The Kiner brothers, like all these different people, like they have a connection to it. They recognize it, but putting their spin on it is not out of the question.
The first time I heard their music in season 7, Mikey, the first time I heard it, I literally went, "This is Blade Runner."
Oh yeah, and
fully intentional. To see Vangelis in the credits.
Yeah, totally intentional on their part. I mean, I think that you use that because you want to harken back to that vibe, that bleakness of Blade Runner.
That was the time they were going down into the that part of Coruscant or whatever, the lower level.
Well, I mean, I specifically remember it in the Ahsoka arc, the last arc. I mean, that last episode,
those 4 episodes especially stood out.
Man, they used it just to perfection, and I'm wanting that. I mean, I'm old school and I need that in some physical form, not just digital. I mean, to Fatmatic's point, I mean, you can get all this music on Apple, but I don't listen to. I'm old. I want like a CD or even like a vinyl. I want something that I can, listen to at the house or listen to in the car. Yes, my car still has a CD player. So yeah, anyways, but all right, to Rhett's point, we probably do need to move on to Loki at some point. I mean, but
we've gone almost double what the episode was.
Oh no, yeah, the episode was 27 minutes, so okay, you're right. But Loki, on the flip side of that, the shortest episode of the season yet, 42 minutes, which, that worked. Hey, Falcon and Winter Soldier did that a lot. They had really, and, obviously WandaVision, they had short episodes.
Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of fluctuated.
Yeah, it fluctuated quite a bit. So anyways.
Almost like Mandalorian in that
respect. I do have to throw this up because, look, I would own it on VHS. I don't care. I don't have a VCR, but, exactly. Beta only, right? So yeah, Loki, gosh, a lot of interesting things obviously happened in this particular episode titled Lamentus. We see some very cool action sequences with Sylvie and how skilled she is at fighting. I mean, we saw that a little bit in the previous episode, but this episode, I mean, I loved that scene where she used her crown as a weapon. Yes. I thought that was bad A. I mean, that was
she had that part in that hallway where she runs up the wall, flips around.
Yes.
Like that was had very, a little bit of Black Widow vibe, but close quarters combat stuff, which is always fun.
So good. No, come on, Brian. No, look. Here's the deal with all Kevin Feige shows and all Dave Filoni shows.
They don't do filler.
There's no filler episodes. There
Especially
was
when you've only got 6.
I don't think this is a filler episode, but I will say this felt like the highest budget Doctor Who episode I've ever seen. That was also kind of mediocre because it was more of a character exploration.
Yeah, but man, there was the really big reveal, and I guess we'll jump towards this was towards the end of really the episode. Cool but well, I don't want to jump to so we start what to me looks like Hawaii.
In the TVA.
Yeah. Right? Well, no. We start, I think, before that, where she's trying to.
She's got the guard.
She's got the guard.
They're at dinner with the brain
how
freeze.
She manipulated.
Yeah. We're being shown, and I didn't realize. Obviously, they have the big reveal at the very end of the episode about how old and all of this, like that character is. I mean, craziness, like how long ago that was in this character's mind. Kind of blew my mind, but yeah, I mean, we see a lot of that. I'm trying to see some of the stuff. So she was basically trying to figure out how many people were guarding the timekeepers, and how do they find, and she got how do you find the gold elevator and that type of stuff. So we see some important conversations that she's trying to get out of that particular character, that Sasha Lane's. I can't remember what her code name was or whatever, but
it's clear that it's hurting the person she's doing that to.
Right.
Yeah. Like kind of breaking her brain in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And she alludes to that a little bit as she's talking with Loki later on in the episode. Depending on the strength of one's mind, she may have to hurt the person a little bit to break their mind. Very Jedi-like, right? I mean, the strength of one's mind has to do with if a Jedi can, manipulate somebody in that manner. It seems like very much that way with Sylvie. The strength, she obviously could not penetrate at all Loki's mind.
No.
So, I mean, that
Loki's got a very, I guess, strong mind is what they're displaying.
Yeah, and so we do get that, like we alluded to, that really cool action sequence of her trying to get to the gold elevators, taking out a lot of the Minutemen.
By the way, the timekeepers are very easy to get to. I mean,
well,
I think look, and we discover some things about the TVA later on that makes me think maybe timekeepers aren't real. Maybe, maybe it's not as it seems, and that's why it's so easy to get there. But yeah, it just seemed a bit easy.
Yeah, I mean, my personal speculation is that Renslayer is the big bad in this.
I think if she's not, I think she's the
she's
main
close
bad of the
to
show.
who the think
she's the main bad of the show, like Loki is in Avengers, but she may have someone above her that she's with.
Right, which comics would tell you it's Kang, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see if that pans
I'd love
out.
to see Jonathan Majors in there.
Oh yeah, dude, I would be all about that if they showed him that early, because I mean, from the leaks, he's not coming until Quantumania, which is a long time from now. So
they announced him so early.
Yes, they did. they did announce him.
Do that, but
really, really early.
One of my notes was that the timekeeper weapon, the death stick, as it were,
yeah.
Has a lot of similar vibes to Jeff Goldblum's melting stick in Ragnarok, but not as messy.
Yeah.
I was literally just thinking the same thing. That one turns you into goo. This one just makes
that one you just you're gone. But yeah, I get melting stick vibes every time somebody gets lit up with that thing.
Yeah. Sylvie reveals quite a bit out of frustration, but quite a bit to Loki in the sense that she had been working on this plan for many years. She said. Now, time, we don't know. I mean,
time doesn't really matter technically. She can jump.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So that's what's weird. Like, to even mention, I've been working on this for years. Well, do we really even need to mention that? I mean, if I don't know, other than she was just frustrated about the situation.
I thought the most interesting thing about her character was that, I mean, they've built kind of the way that they've introduced her is Lady Loki in a sense, but she's not really Lady Loki from the comics.
No,
the way she talks about her backstory, she doesn't have the same life that Loki had.
Yeah, and
she didn't really get to know her mother. It seemed like she went on the run at a much earlier age.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting, and it feels like a completely different character because she's going by a completely different name. So I kind of
and she even says that. She even says, "I chose this alias." Because she does not want to equate herself at all with Loki, even though she is a variant of Loki. Right. She feels like she is, and has always been on a different path than our Loki has been. And I mean, some of that dialogue was confusing to me because I was like, if this is a variant of the main Loki, why didn't she have similar things happen to her? But I don't know.
It's why I feel like there's more than one timeline, but that's just me.
Oh, okay.
You know, they say that there's a sacred timeline, but I feel like that's kind of baloney. I feel like they're lying to the people. I mean, we've clearly already been lied to with the reveal we'll get to later, and we'll talk about that. But yeah.
You know, obviously, like you mentioned, we get a lot of character development of both characters, which I think is going to come into play. But there's this whole aspect of the temp pad, right? The temp pad breaks. We get a name for it, which I had to turn on the closed captioning to understand what these British people were saying, because I was like, what word are they exactly saying?
You are like my parents when we were watching Doctor Who. Yeah, that's
well, I mean, it just like I thought I heard like time pad at one point, and so I was like, okay, I'm turning on the closed cap. I can't understand exactly what they're saying, but yeah, it breaks. They're stuck on Lamentus 1, the year 2077, which is interesting. And another thing that I didn't quite understand is, how does Sylvie know so much about the history of this particular planet?
She's probably been there a ton. I mean, again, she jumps around to all these different
apocalyptic events. Yeah.
Apocalyptic. That's a good point. I forgot about that.
And with her saying that she's been planning it for so long,
that's true.
Well, and also we saw the amount of bombs she had and sent out. That had to be years worth of collections.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that's one of the places she probably hid out in.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah. So she. But this is to her, this is like the worst of the worst. Nobody gets out. I mean, so
this when she tells
I'm
me,
like, you know,
she probably went there once and probably had a really bad experience and decided.
Yeah,
to go back.
Exactly. Yeah. I do like some of the aspects of the people having to get on this train to go to the Ark. That's very much like, what was the disaster film that they were trying to get to the big arcs? Was that Day After Tomorrow or whatever? That Dennis Quaid.
No.
There was like these 3 big arcs that they were trying to get to because the world was ending. It had, in my mind, it had that very similar.
They also had kind of a class system on this one, which I saw a lot of people on social media compare that to Snowpiercer. In a way, sort of, but I wouldn't compare it directly to Snowpiercer.
No, but the concept of, you know, the rich are the ones getting on the train. Yeah, they're front of the train.
Technically, in Snowpiercer, the poor people are on the train, but
right. Well, now, not to go on a Snowpiercer tangent, but they did force themselves on that train. They weren't like allowed on that train. If you're watching the series on TBS, I think they forced themselves on the train. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. but yeah, so we get to see. Oh, and another thing, this was Sylvie's first time realizing that when she's at the TVA, she cannot use her magic.
Right.
There was that realization because she had obviously never gotten this far. So that realization clicked in that she could not enchant people when she is in this, who knows what it is, place that's probably not real. I've read some crazy Reddit theories that this ties into Ant-Man somehow, and that this might.
If Kang is in it, then yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I'm starting to think that it's not a real place just because a lot of the stuff that they mentioned in this episode, and the fact that it seemed really easy to get to the timekeeper elevator, and I mean, like without much effort, she was gonna get there if it hadn't been for Loki.
I have a feeling if they got on that elevator, they'd be really disappointed by what they'd find. I don't think they'd find 3 lizards. I think they might find nothing. But
they might find nothing.
I don't even know if Kang would be up there,
Yeah, I mean, again, I really think this is probably a Renslayer and a Kang thing, and it's just the story that they have told these people.
Time traveler.
He is. Yep.
So, I mean, it would make sense that he was a part of the Time Variance Authority in some aspect.
Well, I don't even know that the Time Variance Authority really has any power whatsoever. I'm just thinking this is all a ruse of some type.
They clearly monitor things pretty well on at least the MCU timeline. But other than that, and clearly have, well, again, whenever you want to get into the reveal, I'll go into what I was going to say.
Yeah. We do get to have some really cool character development moments on the train. They're talking about, their lives. We get to hear more about how he feels about, his mom, which I loved that part. And just them getting to know each other in a show that we didn't think we were going to get that, where who knew that they were going to take the time to have character development type stuff with both these characters, more so Loki than Sylvie, I think, but she also got to say that, she barely remembered her mom, that type of thing.
Yeah, they kind of got the bond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dinner.
You know what that scene made me think of?
What's that?
And of course, not a direct 1-to-1 correlation, but it felt like the scene on the train in Casino Royale where Bond is talking to what's her name when they're on their way to the poker game, and she's talking about, you grew up like this and you did such and such and such and such, and like it was that back and forth where they're kind of taking each other apart, and obviously again not 1-to-1, but that was what I kept thinking.
Well, no, but that's a good.
Vesper?
That was Vesper. Yeah, that's a good point because again. With it's just not a moment that you would think you would get in an MCU show or even in a Bond movie. It's like where they would take the time to slow down, and even in Heat, where they take the time
psychological work.
Yeah, exactly. And in Heat, you've got the big moment between De Niro and Pacino in the diner.
Great.
I mean, they take those that like slow everything down, take that character moment, and develop the characters. Rhett, you're so stupid. but we also get to see an homage to his brother when he's in the midst of drinking, and he throws.
Another.
Another.
I wrote down is that I'm guessing that's clearly an Asgardian tradition.
Clearly. And who knew that Loki had such a good singing voice? I mean, that's when he did the slow part of the song, I was a bit enchanted myself. I was like, hey, this is pretty good stuff, Loki. I like it. But Sylvie was not real happy with him during that whole part. I mean, he basically showed his butt and got him kicked off. Well, in a way, they ended up having to get kicked off the train.
Yeah. I saw an interesting conversation, and I was kind of having it with myself during this episode. I feel like Loki just, I don't know, they're portraying him as very silly and not careful in this show, and
right.
And I get it. He's not wrapping his mind fully around what's happening right now. But doesn't feel like the Loki I saw in Thor, at least, who was very planning and very cunning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that. Yeah, he's been thrown for a loop, right?
Yeah,
I mean, totally.
That's how I feel. I feel he really doesn't understand everything, and he's just kind of going with the flow.
He's out of his element and he feels out of control.
My hope is towards the end he gets back to more of a cunning character, more planning.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously he was trying at the beginning of the episode. He was trying to get Sylvie to say, "Hey, let's team up. I want to work with you on this." I mean, whatever your end game is, which she does specifically say. Well, I don't know if this was it was in the previous episode that she said, my intention is not at all to throw over the timekeepers.
She doesn't care about
that. I mean, we still don't really know what her intention is then, right? No. I mean, yeah, and that's one piece
to be explored. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one piece of the puzzle that we have no clue about. Like if her intention is not to rule the timekeepers, what exactly is her intention?
What are we doing here?
Yeah. What exactly are we doing here? Let me see what else I've got. Well, I mean, we obviously have them coming up with the plan of, well, the reveal that that these are variants that are ruled, that have been manipulated, and they're not just some weird entities.
Yes.
That's pretty big.
Well, it's big because it's the first straight up lie we've gotten so far. Miss Minutes in the introductions says every person working for the agency was created by the timekeepers to work for the agency.
Right.
Now we know that they're people that have been pulled out of the timeline as variants. And that I guess they've been mind wiped in some way. So I'm guessing they don't even know or realize it. So
no, well, I mean, and even Loki said that. Yeah,
Owen Wilson is clearly from the '90s.
Well, I was going to say to Rhett's comment, and exactly what I was going to say is one of the things I saw on Twitter after it dropped was that Mobius was probably from like the 90s at some point at the peak of like jet ski craze, and that's why that's that lingering something in his mind that he connects to.
He's drinking that cola, and he talks. I think he literally mentioned at one point how much he liked the '90s, or something to that effect.
Yeah. And that almost alludes to the Sasha Lane character, who we hear is 100 years. Like she had to go back 100 years to pinpoint, that she liked margaritas, and so she was able to show up in what looked like Hawaii. I don't know if that's where it was, but it had that feel, like Polynesian Hawaiian feel, where she was trying to. Right. No, there's no mention of wow. Sorry, Rhett.
Well, and I'm going to go ahead and save Rhett some heartache right now, because there was an interview that dropped at some point this week where it was explicitly stated that Owen Wilson doesn't say wow in this show.
The director said he's not.
It's a shame, really.
Sorry, Rhett. I mean, peace out.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame. It's sad. They should do that, but yeah. So I think that that's a pretty big deal that we find out these are humans, and it blows Loki's mind a bit, because he's like, they don't know that they are humans. I mean, they just think, and time obviously does not pass when they're at the TVA. Well, I mean, and Fetmatic's right. We don't know this for sure, but the workers could be a mixture of both, like humans and whatever. I mean, I don't know obviously what the other thing would be, but that's a good point, Fetmatic. I mean,
I've been thinking about what this entire organization is, and I could just lay out my little basic feeling of what it is, because everyone keeps mentioning like, well, the TVA is only filled with humans. I feel like we're only seeing one side of the TVA. I feel like it's filled with the entire, catalog of species, but Loki's only interacting with the humans because those are the only people that really matter with his section of the TVA. But the way that Sylvie said it seemed like the entire organization was made up of variants. I could be wrong.
The way she said it, yeah.
And I like what you're saying, Ryfin, about we're only seeing one part of it, and the fact there have been several times when I've watched it when they're at the TVA that I get strong like Men in Black headquarters vibes. Like there's all kinds
massive.
Just all kinds of stuff going on, and we're just because I mean they have that part where they're looking out into the middle of it and how expansive it is, and there could be Tanwis and Lamasus on the other side of that big complex that we don't know about, or ETs or Q-tip people. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get some. I mean, because obviously in the first episode they did show an alien species, right? I mean, it's not like they showed
a Skrull being taken in, but the Skrull probably could have been arrested, mistaken for a human, and then taken to the Skrull department.
That's a good point. The Skrull. I like that aspect of that thought process, right? And that each different species has its own,
that's what
department.
I'm saying. They've taken variants to work all these different departments. That's my headcanon.
That's right.
Until they contradict.
Hey. Until they got no, it's a good theory though. I mean, I like
does Rocket end up in the rabbit department?
Rocket's in a unique department. They don't know what to do with him.
Exactly. Let's see. Oh, one thing that I didn't know her name last week, but I want to say her name this week because I think again this week we get a great score. Natalie Holt is the composer. She is fantastic.
Yes.
I haven't looked up on IMDb to see like what her previous work was, but this soundtrack and this score rivals anything that the Kiners are doing, in my opinion. I mean, it's great stuff.
And it's similar in a way.
It is very similar. Yeah. It has that, especially this episode, there was some flourishes, again, Vangelis flourishes, but they're using a lot of synthesized type sounds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that actually maybe, and I really like the show. I think episode 3 was probably their worst episode so far, but I'm fine with that because they wanted to establish certain things and slow it down a little bit. But but the music may be my favorite part of the show, honestly.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to give her name a shout out because really good, and I didn't have it last week, and I wrote it down. I was like, that's why I wrote that person's name down because I want to say her name and give her the shout out because it's fantastic work. I think again, I think we mentioned this, and I hate to self-plug, but I think we mentioned this on CTI where the production value of these MCU shows are just as impressive as the films. Like they are not. The budget's much lower, I'm sure, but it just looks just as good to me.
The budget's pretty high. Well, I would say the budget rivals the movies, but there's some caveats. The movies are 2-hour projects, 2.5-hour projects. This is a 6-hour project with the same amount of money, basically, from what I've seen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's heavy duty. I didn't know that.
There was also something else I was going to say, and it totally left my brain.
Oh no, my bad.
I'll bring it up if we get back to it.
But yeah, I mean, I think Tommy mentioned that he was just very much impressed with the amount of effort that they're putting into these shows to make it feel like, hey, this is an MCU show. It's not unlike the movies at all.
But something we read, and I passed that article around to you, I think around the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is that they are running these shows like the movies. They're not running these shows like the shows, like literally on set. They have showrunners, but they have about the same amount of say as the directors on certain things. And the actors all said it pretty much. They were scared that it was going to feel like an ABC Studios show. But when they got on set, they realized it felt just like the movies. It felt just like they were making the movies. The whole process has been streamlined pretty well by Kevin Feige.
Well, I mean, and it helps with these shorter episode series like Falcon and Winter Soldier and this series where you have the same director throughout. WandaVision had a couple different directors, I think.
Nope.
Was it the same?
Matt Shakman.
Oh, I thought that it was. Okay. Well, that's a bit different than say like the Lucasfilm shows.
Had to do every single different iteration of.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's 2 shows in a row or 3 shows in a row then that we've gotten the same director, and I guess that's going to be consistent. And that in and of itself, I would think would help the actors to feel as if they're on a movie set versus a television set.
This episode, by the way, if you want to preview, was written by the lady who is the showrunner for Miss Marvel. So I know that I know you spoke about that on CTI this week.
Well, yeah. I mean, I said, and it's only because of my unfamiliarity with the character that I'm not jazzed about She-Hulk or Miss Marvel. I mean, I'm
jazzed
not
about She-Hulk, but
Yeah, I think She-Hulk we're certainly going to. Yeah, I just don't know anything. That's a newer character, Miss Marvel. Yes. And I just don't know anything about it. And I felt from like the small amounts that we've seen of that show in different areas or in different places that it felt like they're obviously going to go more like the teenage route. I mean, because she's a teenager or whatever. Yeah. And so there's going to be, I don't know. I don't know that I will connect with that show as much as I have.
I feel you.
These other shows, but that's cool that it's the same writer. I mean, that's or director. I mean, what'd you say, director or writer? Oh, okay. Wait, now I thought Waldron.
Well, Waldron is he's the showrunner, and so I think he wrote the pilot. But either way, he wrote the overarching story. And they have they have a writer's room. And there was a lady who wrote the second episode. I can't remember her name, but he tagged her on Twitter. And the writer who wrote this episode is the showrunner of Miss Marvel. So
interesting. All right, Nick, what are we missing? Did we miss anything?
I thought that the exploding planet looked like the Death Star right before it blew up. It had the big round part with the line across it. So, of course, my mind went to that. Yep.
100 years. 77. Yeah, exactly.
I love and this goes to their little back and forth stuff. I love the conversation about what is love. Loki says love is hate. She says, no, it's not. Love is a mystery. Yeah. And then he basically says, I need to get drunk and think about this some more. And he comes back with,
go on.
No, I was just going to say, and so he comes back with love is a dagger. It's a weapon to be wielded far away or up close. It's beautiful. You can see yourself in it until it makes you bleed. And like he kind of gave him crap and he was like, yeah, that's not very good. And she's like, no, that's terrible, but it is kind of good.
Well, I think the beginning of that speech is really good. And I think it peters out once he gets to the
it's kind of like the Michael Scott thing. Like he started talking and hoped he was going to get to wherever he wanted to get to at the end.
Yeah.
And I promised Rhett we would mention this because film nerds like we are, the long take at the end of the episode was about it was a 3-minute long. It was pretty awesome. I mean, I loved it. So yeah. I mean, good stuff.
Was really good.
I mean, and Rhett answered Brian's question already, but yeah, that ship blew up, and they even Sylvie even alluded to that earlier in the episode that nobody gets off this planet, and then they come up with the plan.
It's like, well, we'll get them off, and then
or he was like, well, we weren't on that ship, so then the idea is we're gonna get on the ship. So, anyways, I did not have any other notes on this, but if you guys have anything else, please spit it out.
Lamentis 1 is the moon of Lamentis, which is Lamentis is a comic world, so Lamentis 1 is technically the moon of that comic world.
Right. Okay, well, let me ask you this: Did what happens on Lamentis? I mean, what's the significance? You said it's a Kree.
He said it was,
it's on the edge of Kree space, so it may not be a Kree world, but
like the modern Guardians team or something was maybe formed there or near there, or something like that, in the comics, and that it was a part of or near the Annihilation event in the comics, if you've read that. I don't know that I have much else, though. I have the Lady Loki, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're still stuck there, so I guess that was my biggest question: is what's going to happen?
Right? What exactly?
How are they going to get bailed out?
Yeah, and that's what it'll be. I mean, it'll have to be a complete bailout because the ship exploded. I mean, they don't have. I mean, what do they do from there? If the ship exploded, there ain't nothing else they can do, right? I mean.
I don't know what science words Rhett is using, but I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, of course. This is Rhett in and of a nutshell right here. This particular comment, if you want to know Rhett when it comes to shows, Star Wars, Marvel, anything, that's the comment that you look at and understand. Now you know the mind of Rhett. Exactly. In another life, I think Rhett was an astronaut. I think I don't know, or a scientist or something.
I didn't write this down, but I mentioned Doctor Who earlier. I gotta say, Tom Hiddleston could probably make a pretty good Doctor Who if they went that route.
I mean, he's too big for that now. I mean, they're not gonna.
Yes. Oh yeah. He's too big for it now.
Yeah, I don't think. But you're right.
He displayed in this episode some good silly Doctor Who-ish chops.
Yes, very much so. Well, guys, I think that we are over an hour, so I think this is an appropriate place to end. Nick, 2 weeks in a row, brother. Thank you so much. 2 weeks in a row.
Glad to do it. Always glad to help out.
Yeah, and we will definitely have you back towards the end of Bad Batch, because we have to bring this together with probably all four of us. Dr. Earl will be back because that show ends in August sometime.
Yep.
And that finale is probably going to be big time. So I want to have all four of us on for that. So
sounds good.
And maybe even the finale of Loki, depending on where the show goes. If it's a complete bust and really boring, then but I don't think it's going to be. I think it'll be more. Ryfin, as always, thank you for joining. And Nick, I'll circle back to you. But Ryfin, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at SUPASH3, on Letterboxd at GRyfin, and on the Deucecast Discord sometimes.
Thank you for the self-plug. And Nick, where can the people find you? And please tell us about your episode tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to try. I'll be on the beach, but I'll try to make it. But
I like the effort. I like the pre-effort.
The pre-effort.
You can find me Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at WillsPod. The podcast is called Podcast of the Wills. It's a Star Wars podcast. Every Sunday night we have on different guests, interview. Sometimes I make a cocktail and named it after my guest. We're going to do that tomorrow night. Awesome. And then we count down a top 7 list because there's not enough listicles in Star Wars. So my guest tomorrow night is Brian Barry. Brian is one of the hosts of the Pink Milk podcast, and it's him. Brian is very much into Star Wars. It's he and his husband, who is very much not into Star Wars. And it's a great podcast because you have that dynamic of a hardcore fan and somebody who's kind of drug along the way. But they also get into some really great cultural conversations, things that relate to, their community. And then they have a great show on Friday nights called The Steam Room, and they do it live. And so they've got a great live chat for that. So I've loved getting to know those guys through their show. And I'm excited to have Brian on tomorrow night to talk to him. If you're looking for us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/podcast of the Wills.
Yep. I'm very much looking forward to that episode. I will do my best. I might have a Mai Tai in one hand, and we'll see. We'll see if
anybody can't catch us when we're live on Sunday nights, usually Sunday nights at 8, it is also available as an audio podcast of the Wills. You can search for it on most of your regular podcatchers, and you can still get the audio version.
Awesome. And I can be found on Twitter at the Michael Nip, at the Deucecast as well. As I mentioned on an episode of the Deucecast that we recorded but will be released, I don't know when it's releasing.
Wednesday?
We do, Wednesday. We do have a Discord, but I'm keeping it sort of small. I could throw the invite out there on social media, but I actually, if you are a listener and for some reason are not on the Discord yet, please DM at the Deucecast, or you can DM me on Twitter and I will send you an invite. I'm just trying to sort of keep it a small group, which I'm enjoying the group of people a lot that are in that Discord, and we have really great conversation throughout the day about movies, TV, whatever, life, who knows, life, everything. And what's the Douglas Adams book? I can't ever remember that one. But as always, I really appreciate everybody that joined us live. The live chat makes this much more fun than if we didn't have people participating. It's a lot of fun. I love it. And so if you happen to be catching this later on the Deucecast YouTube page, please leave a comment. I'll do my best to respond. But as always, the most important thing with YouTube, if we do want to continue to grow this show a little bit, is please share it with your friends. Click that notification button. We could go live at any time. Obviously, we're live on Saturday instead of Monday. We like to mix it up around here. And then, subscribe as well if you haven't. I mean, it's part of this crazy algorithm of YouTube. And we would just love you guys to share the episode so we can get some more subscribers. So again, I really appreciate everyone joining us tonight, Ryfin and Nick. And thanks so much. Everybody have a wonderful week.
Peace.